Buenas tardes. De nuevo, como siempre, que siempre repito lo mismo, bienvenidos y muchas gracias por estar aquí. Ya hemos pasado el ecuador de la serie de conferencias, estamos con la quinta, esta vez con Kosmos, un estudio que nace en Moscou, pero se expande a diferentes ciudades europeas, Zurich y Graz entre ellas. Y para ello nos ha venido Leonid Slonimskiy, no sé si lo he pronunciado bien, pero bueno. Y presentará Laura Solsona del estudio Self a la presentación. Lo hacemos en castellano porque él entiende castellano, o sea que no somos antipáticos.
Buenas tardes y gracias, Moisés, por invitarme a presentar esta charla. También quiero agradecer la organización de este segundo ciclo de Europa Europa, que nos está reuniendo aquí cada jueves de este invierno y nos invita a reflexionar sobre la arquitectura que todos seguimos y admiramos. Hoy tengo el placer de presentar a Kosmos y en particular a Leonid, no me voy a arriesgar con el apellido yo, que ha venido a Barcelona para compartir su trabajo con nosotros, así que gracias, Leonid, por acompañarnos. Kosmos refleja muy bien algunas de las condiciones en las que nos encontramos los estudios de nuestra generación. Se trata de un colectivo internacional de arquitectos que desde 2012 colabora de manera virtual. Es un claro ejemplo de cómo trabajamos hoy en día y, en cierto modo, pionero en este modelo, donde la autoría es compartida, los proyectos son globales y la colaboración es necesaria. Son alrededor de 15 miembros formados en distintas universidades como la de Moscú o la de Columbia en Nueva York y hoy trabajan desde ciudades como Berlín, Graz, Zurich o Tbilisi, por nombrar alguna de ellas, desarrollando proyectos en distintos territorios y colaborando con arquitectos, industriales, artistas o expertos en distintos temas según lo requiera cada proyecto. A través de su trabajo abordan la arquitectura de una manera lúdica y sin prejuicios, con una mirada curiosa que les permite explorar diversas escalas. Pensando con la misma intensidad desde un pomo de puerta hasta un master plan, generan alrededor de cada proyecto un espacio de reflexión sobre cuestiones más amplias. Uno de los aspectos que más destaca es la naturalidad con la que abordan el factor tiempo en su práctica. Son capaces de reconstruir una casa de campo centenaria, la Maison Chèvre, en un pueblo de Suiza, con gran sensibilidad, respetando su lógica e historia, al mismo tiempo que imaginan un futuro especulativo para el campo polaco en su proyecto Country Spine, que cuestiona patrones de asentamiento en áreas rurales en transformación durante el pasado siglo XXI y que formó parte de la Biennal de Venecia de 2021. En su trabajo, ya sean interiores, proyectos urbanos especulativos, exposiciones o proyectos docentes, la relación entre el ayer y el mañana construye una noción de lo contemporáneo un tanto ambigua, pero entusiasta, que desarrollan con frescura, cuidado, una representación propia y un toque de humor. Una postura, eso sí, que se interesa y es consciente de los procesos constructivos, que cuestiona la linealidad de la arquitectura y explora soluciones basadas en la reutilización, la curaduría del espacio, la evolución de la tecnología y materiales a lo largo del tiempo. Por todo ello, muchas ganas de escuchar lo que nos presenta hoy Leonid, así que os dejo con Kosmos. Muchas gracias.
Moltes gràcies. Bona tarda a tothom. Puc parlar una mica, però faré la presentació en anglès per expressar millor les meves idees. My name is Leonid Slonimskiy. I am the founding partner of Kosmos Architects, and first I would like to say thank you to everyone who organized this and invited us. As was already said, I think, the name of today's presentation would be Permanently Temporary, and I will explain a bit later about it. And first I would like to present you the team, which was already nicely presented by you. We are 15 people, based, as you said, in different places, but I personally live and work in Zurich. where is the headquarters of our office in Europe. And the first thing I would like to show you today will be not our work, but will be a book, a publication, which is just right now is getting out of the press. So I invite you also to get it. And it's a passion which we, with my partner Artem and with some architects from the office, share for quite some time. It is a book just recently published in Switzerland with Birkhäuser Publishing House, with the essays of our colleagues and friends, Jan de Wilder, Philip Ursprung, and Charlotte Maltere-Barthes. It's called Temporary Texture, Structures of Necessity. And basically it speaks about the fact that, as we know, as we study architecture, this is kind of the typical image, the città ideale of architecture, which we learn in school, and that's how we design buildings. But actual city is full of another layer of structures which facilitate different technical things, from safety to protection, from light to advertising, from construction to faking or hiding something. And basically the book is divided in several chapters, which each one speaks about these conditions of necessity, from which it's a type of anonymous contemporary infrastructure architecture from which we believe we can learn. And that's to what this book is dedicated. And now I will show you a couple of examples, a couple of spreads from this book. The obvious area where the structures exist is construction. And the interesting thing is that the scaffoldings and the things which precede buildings are sometimes much more, let's say, progressive and sometimes more innovative than the buildings which are erected behind them. So, for instance, this is a scaffolding of Isaac Cathedral in St. Petersburg, which is 200 years ago, which was built 200 years ago before the existence of modernism and all the new movements of architecture, which it looks much more. Sometimes it's much more unique than the buildings which it hides, and it creates a completely unique conditions. Sometimes it also helps to hide things, and we all know these kind of huge structures which stand in the cities for years, and here we speak about the permanence of something temporary and hide enormous construction sites, but are kind of excluded from the perception of the citizens because they are just labeled temporary. These structures also facilitate and help us to do what architecture fails to do. It helps us to let's say, to deal with climatic problems, such as this situation of Swiss melting glaciers, which was covered with thousands of square meters of textiles, or whole streets in Bangkok, where we used to teach, where they were covered with this textile in order to provide also more comfortable climatic conditions. Or probably all you know these structures which appear during the periods of Acqua Alta in Venice. Obviously, safety comes first, and these structures, they, no matter where they appear, in which historical context, they are always allowed to be as bold, as contrasting, and as radical as possible, because they are usually explained because it's needed for safety, it's needed for insurance companies, of the construction companies, and so on. And they create a completely unique conditions, and we all know these passages in probably all European cities which stand there for 10 years, but we never question their presence, we never question their aesthetics, we never question their colors, because they're again labeled as temporary. And sometimes they come to quite unique examples, like this case in Switzerland with brooms which protect the trains. They also, sometimes they look more decorative than the most, let's say, exotic examples of postmodern architecture, but this decoration and ornament is purely functional. For instance, here the red lines show basically prevent the workers to hit their head on it, so it's marked with the color. And sometimes these ornaments come purely from their structural reasons. Sometimes, like these fumigation sheds, when the buildings are cleaned from fumigation, create a completely exotic examples of architecture, which are, let's say, more expressive than some most radical works of Zaha or Frank Gehry, but they're done again purely for these practical reasons. They facilitate events, and they have a human scale, therefore, because they need to be deconstructed after these events happen very quickly. And we can also learn that architecture in quite a big scale, which is constructed very quickly, can be done for deconstruction, for demontage. And about this I will mention later in our work. And also, obviously, it protects in the cities. It protects during the wars. Like here is the suspended ceilings for the American airplane production, or here it's kind of a drone, like a layer of paint drawn on the theater during the Second World War, in order to pretend that this theater is a series of small buildings so that it avoids bombing of Nazi aviation. It also protects buildings structurally, and these are, for instance, examples from the First World War and from today the monuments covered in Ukraine. And also during the social conflicts like these are the boarded windows during the so-called protest of Gilets jaunes in Paris, which covered all the elite boutiques from the riots. And also we can come to a conclusion that in a way this is a contemporary vernacular architecture, because it has the logic no one would carry scaffolding, so these type of structures, from thousands of kilometers away for purely aesthetical reasons or for the choice of an architect. They are inherently ecological and smart and economical. And here we can see, for instance, bamboo scaffolding, a beautiful invention which is very used in the Southeast Asia, which covers quite a generic building behind it in Hong Kong. This is another example of this vernacularity, the Swiss so-called Bauprofile, the markers of the future existing buildings. Some other examples from Africa. Actually, this is a picture of Leopold Banchini, who gave a lecture here. Yeah, again, the quite generic building covered with amazing bamboo scaffoldings. And I even included one example from Barcelona, where we found that buildings are covered with staircases, and we have not seen this in our research anywhere else in the world. And to conclude this book, we kind of make a point that these structures, we can really learn from them, and they create a certain new order. The similarly way how the Roman or the Greek order has come from the construction techniques, all these structures, they create a certain new order that we can learn from it. We can learn from, again, as I said, from its rationality, from its modestness, from its efficiency, from its ecological concept of design for disassembly. It basically doesn't leave a trace and can be reused in future. So everything what we speak nowadays as, let's say, in the designed architecture, what we are trying to do, everything already exists in this type of architecture. So I invite you to look through it as soon as it is basically now out in print. So, and basically this type of architecture was many times our reflection and many times the source of inspiration for our project. So the first project, or maybe the first project, important project in our office, which we did long ago in 2014, was called Emma Space, when we were requested to rethink an existing old factory which came out of function, and factory of medical instruments, but with a very extremely low budget, and it was supposed to be transformed into a public cultural space. And we started to think of a strategy, and what we saw is that the whole territory had this kind of outdoor rooms, the spaces in between the buildings. So the strategy was to use these rooms and to create a series of outdoor spaces and to leave the interiors almost untouched for this cultural cluster. So we did this physical model where, as you can see, we in all of these pockets, this is a building, but in the model we take away the building and leave continuous wall, which we decided to unite these outdoor spaces in a series of courtyards. And in order to achieve this, so this was one of the atmospheric renderings which we did in the beginning when we didn't know how to activate these courtyards, how to activate these open spaces, but we had this the first inspirational image, and we decided to cover the whole space, including the windows, with the so-called insulation foil, which is used for insulation of the facades, and roofs, which you probably know. In order to, and we created this kind of a detail in order to create a total atmosphere of this cultural cluster in this space, activating these courtyards for events, lectures, parties, and so on. And another kind of solution which we proposed in all the courtyards was this suspended luminous sky, which we took the reference of the trolleybus wires and activated the space with a series of reflectors, lights, and in order to make it more, let's say, theatrical and to make a point, we created this huge disc which became the center of the activity in this place. It was 9-meter high, wide disc, which was used as a background for theatrical performances, music performances, DJs, and so on. And it has this kind of a bit unrealistic white color, because we used the road, which is used again in the infrastructural safety lining for cars, which has kind of inside these white reflective particles, which create this illusion that this, let's say, moon or disk looks more fake or more theatrical and more kind of cardboard moon than it actually is. So it became quite a successful back then, the project, and it was the first time when we realized the power also of social media and let's say the tagging of the place, when we realized that this physical and digital realities, which is now completely a norm, but it was just 10 years ago, that the digital is actually more important than the physical, because the space was later disassembled, but it stayed in it left a digital trace. And inside, as I said, it was not at all touched, but through the kind of cheaply renovated interiors, you would pass to these courtyards, and even the people would be part of the this installation. The next project I would like to show today is was built in Barcelona, and that's how I also appeared in the city, met some of you, and it was called Permanently Temporary Pavilion, and we did it for Model Fest 2 years ago in collaboration with Parabase Architects, our Swiss Catalan colleagues. And the question of this project, the topic was called Entry Materials, and the question which we put to ourselves was revealing the hidden resources of the city, because we constantly demolish more and more and build new buildings, but sometimes we can stop and look at the image like this, where we can see thousands of kind of idle construction materials lying there. And together with our partners and with the organizers of the festival, we decided to visit around a dozen of different storages of city civil storages of materials around Barcelona, went to all the peripheries, and started to realize that there is an immense stock of completely new materials, which is lying there for years and months without any need. It's lots of mineral materials. There is a place where there are 2,000 jerseys, which you probably all know, the typical one for road barriers, all types of woods and pipes, tons of asphalt. Some materials are even new, and they stay like this for years. They are waiting to be able to replace broken materials. And we even found one concrete tunnel, which was given to, like a pieces of it was given to us by Sorige company for some time, because they made some kind of technical mistake, and they were also lying down thousands of these panels for a concrete tunnel somewhere waiting for not clear what. Also the objects which come out of season, because when you need to put the water, and sometimes in winter you don't need these buckets. And one of the most exciting was, of course, the storage of the historical. So similarly to all these concrete blocks, there's also a huge storage of historical statues and historical elements, which we saw with the city of Barcelona, where we could choose a statue for temporary use. And one beautiful building was this spiral, how Guillermo once joked, it was, he called it a trash Guggenheim, because it was a kind of a Guggenheim, Solomon Guggenheim museum, but full of trash, unused trash. We even saw Gaudi doors, and probably all you know the leftovers of Enrique Miralles, Tir de Arcos. So after collecting, let's say, a catalog of all these materials, we have selected and carefully selected some of them, and majority was mineral elements, because we wanted to underline that these temporary elements, they don't need to be always done out of temporary plastic or wood, that there is, if you just borrow materials, you can use any of them. And created a pavilion, kind of, which was standing in the Park of Glorious. And the point of this pavilion was kind of to inform the city of Barcelona about this phenomenon, to invite to discuss this topic. So it was used for different cultural events. Inside there was the central column was done out of this water storages, so it was looked like a lantern, and it was also the gateway to the Glorious Park. As you can see, it is a construction net which is creating a shadow, which is based on a series of mineral totems of different materials, and inside there was kind of an informational table about the topic which I have just discussed to you. And in the evenings it was used to celebrate the thing. And for us it was also important to show that by rethinking the materials, we don't need to always use the materials in the way how they are subscribed to us by conventions, by architecture standards. So for instance, a sculpture can be serving as a column, and the net which is used for scaffolding can be used as a roof. The jerseys can serve as a storage space. And it was very important for us to see this kind of dialogue between the temporary and permanent things. And we have created a certain language of the black lines of this temporary net, hugging these mineral stone materials, including benches made from stacked asphalt plates. And also we did a couple of workshops here with the Barcelona people in order to use all the materials that we have collected to create a series of furniture objects. So it was a bit like an educative project as well. And the most important was that the whole pavilion was fully disassembled and went back to all these multiple storages and served only during the time of the festival. And this is these surrogate plates coming back to unclear reasons laid down somewhere in the fields. But if we speak about this concept, we started to think more and more, and now I'm even teaching a semester dedicated to this topic. How can we use this concept, the concept of the fact of disassembly, in a much more serious structures, not in a small pavilion with free function, but in real construction. And here I would like to present you a competition project which we did in the collaboration with Jan de Wilder and Inge Wink and Professor Philip Block from ETH. It was a tower competition, an office tower designed for the city of Zug, which is a small city in Switzerland, quite an innovative city. And the point was they wanted to make an office tower. And due to COVID, you all know that the offices now are idle. And we thought, really, another office tower, like when we all know that in a couple of years, maybe this function will not be relevant. So we decided to start with the idea that the tower should adapt to future changes, anticipate other functions, and even maybe be disassembled. We were given these two quite simple, so this is already the final project, but the geometry was not questioned in the you were given these volumes. And we started with an invention of this gentleman, Professor Philip Block. He's a very good engineer and architect from ETH Zurich. If you should check out his work. If you don't know, he works with a very thin stone and concrete shells, and particularly he has invented the Riepman floor slab, which is a slab. Here is already kind of an adapted version for our project, which is a slab which works in the same principle as the vaults of the cathedrals, medieval cathedrals. So basically, thanks to these ribs, it allows to be much more stable, and therefore it reduces the amount of concrete used. So in these slabs, you use up to 40% less concrete than in a normal flat slab. And the amazing thing, also this Riepman floor slabs, as you can see, it works as a kind of a simple arch with a keystone in the middle and allows full disassembly. So we started thinking further about the layout of the project, and here's a little diagram. On the left, we call it the Mesian skyscraper. In the middle is kind of Lloyd's building by Richard Rogers, and we wanted to propose a new way of organizing the cores. And actually, if I think why we lost in this competition, maybe because we touched the idea of moving the core, because this was also the idea of the competition, that in future not only the building can be demontage, but also even the cores, which seem to any architect as completely unmovable object, can potentially move. So this was a conceptual image where we show, like, this was just a sketch where we show just these cores everywhere, but this was already the development of the plan. As you can see, maybe in this drawing is better visible, these are different floor plans, and also potential anticipation of future change of the cores. So thanks to the fact that you have this, you probably see this slabs which are organized in plan, and therefore it allows you to theoretically shift the cores both in plan but also in time. So here, for instance, you can see the interior already of this project, which shows so this acoustic panel covers the middle keystone. And together with the ZPF engineers, here is like a little explanation. We have come up also with the idea. So this is the whole building was supposed to be made out of wood and also fully disassemblable wood. So here you can see the joint of the combination of the wood, load-bearing carcass, the bones of the building with the Ripman floor slabs. Here's another zoom in, and that's how it looks in the interiors. And further on, all the facade elements, the solar panels, the idea was that they also potentially could be disassembled. The outside look of the building is pretty simple, but as you can see with lots of joints, it underlines this idea of future disassembly. And it also allowed us to introduce a series of kind of atriums and niches inside the whole building, which can go, so you can disassemble a whole module of the building, allowing double height spaces to appear all around the building. And here you can see the exploded axon with all the elements that I have mentioned. And inside we try to also equally to the logic of which I spoke about in texture, to underline all these details of construction, which would then become the ornamental elements of the design. And here in the section you can see the kind of migrating double height atriums in the space. And here is just a couple of examples of these double height areas in the buildings, which could theoretically in future change their place and function, including also a rooftop kind of recessed area, which is also thanks to the fact that here the slabs are fully demontaged. So this was the project where we tried to really address these issues in a serious, let's say, big construction project. And at the same time, unfortunately, as I said, this project didn't win. I think maybe it was too, let's say, too complex in this sense, although we all believe that it's fully doable. But obviously this type of things, again, coming back to a different scale, are much easier in a small projects. And here I would like to show you a little a project in which we did in Logroño for Concentrico Festival, which is called Off-Season Pavilion. You probably all know Logroño, the place of winemaking, and we wanted to show to speak about this industry, but to show the behind of it infrastructure, which goes behind this postcard wine production, these images that you drink wine on the street, but actually behind these touristic appealing images of Logroño, which we all know of Rioja, there's a whole industry of winemaking. And we found out that there's so-called jaulones de vino, humongous metal cages for wine, which look like this, and they can host hundreds of bottles. And the most interesting thing that we went there in winter, they're standing literally more than half a year out of use. So there are thousands of these cages in the outskirts of Logroño which stand out of use. So after contacting with the producers, we decided to use them as the only element for our pavilion, and have created a little, here you can see it on the right of the image, a little public space, a little pavilion, which is fully made out of borrowed jaulones de vino, creating a little kind of replica of like a little mini chapel of baptisterium with no big function. So it was a very simple construction, also with 3 naves. and they were simply put together in order to create a temporary public space, a temporary shadow, and a place for people together. And the interesting thing that maybe, as you know, the Concentrico Festival has a very small, let's say, budget. It's a small festival organized by the city, but thanks to the idea of just purely borrowing these cages and disassembling them later, it allowed us to exceed like the budget like 50 times. So this building is, if we would buy these materials, it would be extremely expensive, and it was purely for free thanks to the producers of these wine cages, and it served its purpose. It gathered people together. It created a nice space and a nice play of shadows and light. And what was also quite impressive is the way how it's produced. So thanks to anodizing, it has an amazing color. And this is, we did not treat this material anyhow. We just, it was right there in this play of colors. And you can see all the shades from dark blue to pink. And they're purely, again, they come through practical, they appear because of the practical treatment of these cages. And later, as in the situation with the previous projects, these cages were disassembled and went back to serve during the season to store the wine. And maybe to finish this chapter of, let's say, temporary buildings, I would like to show you a sports center, which was a temporary building designed very quickly for an event. This event was the World Football Championship, which was in Moscow in 2018. And it was a very, very big but very quick event. And basically designing a temporary pavilion for this, we thought how to make it that now we are urging to build this structure, but how can it withstand in future? And we thought again of a reference of a billboard, of the simple infrastructural element, which is easily constructible, and it serves the maximum purpose with a minimum of means. And we tried to make a kind of a billboard infrastructure for human activities, and created kind of a simple box with 4 different elements, which can host different functions. So one of them served as the score table, one of them was used for people to go up the roof, one of them was a cover for the running club, and one of them served as a billboard for this event in this building. And this building was built because it was a temporary construction in the Gorky Park. It's the central park of the city. It was built with a very shallow foundation, and the idea was that it doesn't cut any trees, so the indents were done in it. It served its sportive function. It was done for, there was a gym, there was a training room, there were showers inside. It also served as a public space, and also the shadows it created a series of kind of climatic layers in order to protect the interior from overheating. And also here in this project, we called it the concept of the naked building, so the building which reveals all the processes inside. So here on the right, for instance, you can see the server room. On the left, you can see the training storage room, where all the materials are exposed on the facade, and the internal passage of the building, which allows you to go through the building to basketball court, football court, running, or to the outdoor gym. So in the plan, it's built as a simple cross, which allows you to go from the central core to one of the physical activities. And that's how it was standing in the park, activating several sportive zones around it. And the only kind of non-transparent and closed and non-neutral color space was the space of bathrooms, lockers, and the idea was that the sportsmen which are there, they get motivated to run out of this red interior to the greenery of the park. And what was interesting, that it started to serve even during the event, not as only a space for sports, but a space for conferences, for lectures. And funny enough, after the event has finished, and it was supposed to stay there only for a couple of months, temporary stayed there for already it's already 7 years actually standing there, and it started to be used for completely different functions, from pumpkin cuttings to children events to cinema to shop to lectures to workshops. And it was an interesting twist how something that you actually design as a temporary can stay there for quite a long time. And now I would like to shift to a couple of projects which are dealing with an existing. Currently, we are working on around 6 projects with which work on the historical with the historical context, from a winery in France to a couple of houses in Switzerland. And here I show you 2 which are still in process, one in Switzerland, one in Austria, but where we also can think about how the buildings change in future. So both of them are transformation. So the first one is a house in Eysins in Switzerland. It's a transformation of an old barn. It's a very small and picturesque village in Switzerland, where the owners own a big, they call it chateau, a big house. And this house has a little barn as a dependance, a little secondary building. It's a very long, beautiful historical structure, but it has almost no source of light because it's made out of long stone walls, and inside the interior looks like this. But at the same time, the idea is now to transform it to a couple of apartments. And the main question which stood in front of us was how to give the light into this building, and how to make it movable. So we thought of basically literally cutting this building, like once was done by Gordon Matta Clark, in order to create a central space, cutting the roof in order to create these kind of pockets of light. And that's how we proceeded with this building, creating, as you can see, this is a ground floor. You enter into a little patio, and this patio is fully open to the environment. The rain falls there, the snow, and towards it, 2 vis-a-vis little apartments are looking. And here you can see the 2 apartments with a little courtyard, and one is for a smaller family, one is for a bigger. With on each extremity there is also a similar movement in the shape of a balcony, that on each end of your house you have a little balcony as well. And of course, this wouldn't happen also because unless this building was it is a protected building with a certain level of protection, so not the highest one, which allows certain transformations but doesn't allow to change its exterior walls. And that's why we had to work only within this building, creating this type of conditions inside this building. And yeah, currently it's a very long process because it takes a lot. The negotiations take a lot, but we are hoping to see it, and here to see it soon realized. And here is a little funny detail. When you go to one of the living rooms, maybe you have seen there was this moment of rotunda where we have made all the doors from toilet and storage to your sleeping room the same, in order to create this a beautiful yet a bit like Alice Wonderland moment in this house. And then through your sleeping room you get to the one of the balconies on the extremities of the house. And another building which is almost finished now, like its last maybe months of it of the construction, is the house in Vienna. And this is a completely different story. It's about basically rather separate 2 houses which are united by one roof. And when we speak of Vienna, we of course have one image in our head, but actually not many people know that this is also one of the districts of Vienna, one of the peripheral districts of Vienna, but it is technically Vienna city, and there the context is completely different. It's this kind of spreaded little houses, and the clients, they have this quite ugly 1970s cottage, which they completely didn't like and even considered demolishing it. It had not only aesthetical problems, but it had also not a very nice and not very interconnected plan. But we, thinking and believing in the fact that actually we have to use the resources we have, we tried to convince him to actually transform it into a better new house, trying to use what we have. So the plan is also was kind of a very generic yet not very nice looking plan. So what we proposed, the first movement which we proposed was to create a one strong and big roof, which would create a new image of this building and create the feeling of living in one house as a family, and rather than in broken up volumes. And the whole building, this is a rendering for the moment, is covered with one big roof. And the second movement which we proposed was kind of careful opening of multiple areas in this building through a series of cuts which can connect different rooms to each other, which can connect different levels, which can connect interior to the exterior. And here you can see the yellow-red plan where we show the small demolitions which we do in this building in order to create this interconnectivity between internal spaces, between the levels, between different rooms, and between the layers of it. And you can see how they rhyme the interior openings with the exterior ones, and how the house reveals these new interconnections. This is with, at the same time, working with the one massive, let's say, iconic or emblematic roof, which was made also with a series of cuts for this building. And these cuts, they create kind of a, again, this connection, and they work not only in the scale of this building, but also in the urban scale, where this cut in the roof become like a local small icon. And probably the last project I would like to present today is it's a series of works we have done in the mountains of Georgia, and it's a series of projects where we again speak about working with rather scarce resources. I will explain now why. So basically, our clients is a community in the mountains of Georgia, on the border with Azerbaijan, already in a very, very beautiful area. And they're quite fun and creative people who actually, we got this commission through Facebook. They literally wrote a post on Facebook saying we need, for our kingdom, that's how they call it, we need an architect. So we became the kingdom's architects. So this is the landscape there. These are the guys. And they do organic farming there. You can go there like it's kind of a resort. And we wanted, so the first, of course, goal was to create a series of shelters for this community using minimum resources, because everything is kind of self-funded, or you can crowdfund even their project, but and also with a maximum, obviously, fund for these people. So we came up with the concept. The first idea was a concept of little small typologies of primitive, we call them primitive huts, which test different construction methods in order to see different quick local construction methods, which allow us to see which one will work better. And we created a series of kind of projects, which some of them are realized, some of them were not. And one of them, which I would like to show, is the Tin Can Castle, which originally, even at some moment, it was used as the shelter for refugees, which were coming in the beginning of Ukrainian war. So it was really an urgent project for them, and it was fully built for 6,000 euros. And we realized that the resources, the local resources, again, coming back to like the neo-vernacular type of architecture, is very important, because there are some ideas which we had, they purely couldn't realize it, even though these ideas were very simple, just because they didn't have their skilled hands, skilled workers, or materials. So one of the local kind of super popular material is these corrugated sheets, and that's why these first shelters are called Tin Can Castle. So a little chateau, but made out of this metal. We also observed local techniques like such as reuse of tires, or this kind of sticking out, protruding roof structures, and stones which are used to counterbalance the wind. And this is my partner Artem, together with the founder, really went there and chose all these materials from basically a local market, because otherwise that was not a possibility to actually pre-design it. And when all of this was done, we created kind of a manual of how to construct these little huts, in order that the community, and that's how we also achieved such a low budget, the community could actually do it themselves, of course with some workers, but we have placed it in quite beautiful places. These guys, they also like to pose, so we had quite some fun installing these cabins. And then together with everyone, including like the chef, the local chef, and the kids, they have managed to build a series of these little cabins in the forest, and they populated the area around the river. And as you see, using the lessons which we learned from the local, let's say, construction things. And for instance, one little detail which I would like to say is that we really wanted some special window there, and therefore we just bought the cheapest plastic window, which was affordable, and just rotated it 45 degrees in order to create this. But it's actually the super simple and basic solution. And inside it's quite a nice little cozy space to stay. And another project, another shelter, which was done actually even earlier because it was the easiest one to build, and was our maybe first inspiration from the guys, was the series of fairy tale tents. We looked at the historical examples of, for instance, this is a Napoleon traveling military tent. We have created a taxonomy of little shelters, little tents of different proportions, and we thought that the only kind of the only instrument with which we can work for the diversity of this architecture, which will not increase the costs, would be the color. And therefore we created a series of patterns, and out of textile created, let's say, like series of these little tents, which not only worked as the first shelters for this community, but also as lanterns in the night. But it also created some kind of funny moments when someone was doing their private things in this shelter, in these lanterns, and it was obvious to everyone what was going on there. And finally enough, again speaking about the permanence and the impermanence, these things which were planned for quite a short time because people really liked them, they overlived the storm, a hurricane, a flooding, and even rare but beautiful Georgian winters. And the last in this series, and actually in this lecture as well, is the project also for this community temple barn, which started like this. The guys needed a space, so as you see, we have created for them a series of little houses, and they also have built multiple themselves. But they needed also a place for the community where they can gather, where they can party, where they can use it as a workshop, as a lecture space. And by the time when they came to us, again, speaking about using with their, working with the existent, they already bought a prefabricated agricultural shed. And they even decided to start building it when they realized that they actually don't like it. And that's when we got the commission. And by the time while we were thinking, they even started to clad it with an ugly local sheets, which I just showed it, but also chose the kind of the most generic and probably not the nicest color. And the more we looked at this project and the more the time passed, we realized how actually it's a very similar, let's say, spatial typology to a church. And looking at this cathedral in Bologna, we realized that actually these spaces, like churches, like they are actually a very pragmatic and practical spaces which are done like this barn, but then a beautification, an ornament is applied in order to underline their importance. And we thought that we would use the same logic, and we thought again, like in the case of the fairy tents, that the color and the ornament is probably the cheapest instrument which we can use in order to transform these projects. And sometimes we call this project basically temple barn, or how to make a community space with a bucket of white paint. So we realized the quite nice moment of painting this simple painting of this corrugated metal, and took as a reference one of the most beautiful Florence churches. And again, using the community and uniting it, we gave them a task to paint this, let's say, this little barn for them, this little workshop space. And here we use a lot this reference of Tom Sawyer, which was given a task by his aunt to paint a fence, but then through the moment of painting this fence, he has created a whole community of friends who were giving him apples, candies, and so on. And that's how this project also developed. They all painted it according to the drawings, but all together it was a collective process. Another little additions, which you can see, we have created the two little wings, which allow them to store their materials so they don't get wet. And we have cut it a circle light so that it gives light inside. And that's how this barn looks there in the forest. And inside, a bit like the logic of Emma, inside we decided to not change anything and to keep its basic appearance, because we also found it, the way how it was already pre-designed, quite beautiful. And now they are using it as a storage workshop space, as a space where they gather, a space for their activities. They do a lot of handwork, of meetings, and of celebrating, making shashlik, drinking, celebrating birthdays. And that's how it is. Interestingly, this white pattern is rhyming with, again, not very often snow in this region. And with this, I would like to thank you for this evening and for the possibility of presenting. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Leonid. Espera, ahora pasamos a ver si alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta. Any questions?
Y si quieres puedes preguntar en castellano,
sí,
yo puedo.
En castellano.
Sí, entonces no hay problema.
¿Alguien quiere una pregunta? ¿Nadie?
Vale.
Bueno,
mejor.
Pues,
más pronto las cervezas.
Bueno, pues muchísimas gracias. Deciros que descansamos otra semana y después volvemos con las últimas tres, que serán todas seguidas, las de ciclo. O sea, hay una semana que no y después vienen las tres seguidas. Empezamos con Sam Chermayev y ahora que subimos a tomar una cerveza y que quiera hablar con él pues directamente. Pues.
Yo quiero decir que si yo vivo aquí, yo creo que esta lista de arquitectos es muy, muy interesante y cada semana es algo nuevo por el mismo nivel de calidad y de exploración. Y yo soy triste que yo no soy aquí en Barcelona para este meses o estas semanas.
Bueno, pues nada, subimos a tomar una cervecita y habláis con él si queréis.